This is the Bryton Rider 750, and it's the most expensive GPS in their range. It's a clear statement of intent that they want to start targeting the premium end of the market. At only $430 Australian dollars, it is around $100 cheaper than the Garmin Edge 830. Does it justify your money though? Well, I've spent several months testing it, and it's time to find out. From a hardware perspective, this is a fairly tidy little unit with 93 grams on the scales, a 2.8-inch touchscreen, and plus Bluetooth and a pile of different tracking protocols for you to use. The same style mount is used that we've seen before from Bryton. It's sort of in the Garmin style, but it's proprietary enough for me to say don't expect to be able to jam this unit into any other Garmin mount or jam any Garmin into any Bryton mount. They're similar but different enough to not really work well together. Let's take a closer look at the screen though, because that's a really central part of the unit. Now, the touchscreen. I would say it's only okay. It's a little bit laggy when you're trying to scroll, and some of the buttons are really tiny, so you have to be super precise when you're trying to press them, and that can be a problem both when you have the unit in your hand setting it up and when you're out on the bike. It's not quite up to the standard of the Garmin Edge 830 and the surprisingly excellent touchscreen on the Explorer X5 Evo. Let's just say, thankfully the unit has buttons so you don't have to rely exclusively on the touchscreen. I've never been a particular fan of touchscreen GPSs at all, so I wasn't particularly expecting to enjoy the screen of the 750 given how small it is. I think that the Garmin Edge 1030 is about the size where you do enjoy the benefits of a touchscreen. Anything smaller than that and it's too fiddly and too cramped and a bit annoying to use. I've also found that universally touchscreens are much more dull than non-touch screens. So with the 750 you need the backlight running most of the time, or at least on auto, to be visible. Not at all unique to Bryton, the Garmin Edge 830 was exactly the same. Very dull touch screen. So ultimately I didn't love the screen on the Bryton, but then again I didn't like it on the Edge 830 either. Bryton's Active app is a very strong part of the ecosystem, and you use it to set up your device, upload your rides and share them across your services, manage your routes, analyze your activities, and quite a lot more. I think this is an excellent example of how to do a phone app for a bike GPS. I do quite like the Bryton Active app, and basically anything to do with controlling the unit is better done on your phone than on the unit itself. Setting up your screens, for example, is just so much easier with the benefit of a phone screen, and I do like that the app shows you the sort of layout of the screen so it makes more sense when you are setting it up. There's still that interesting little data field quirk where it saves the data fields to the number of data fields. So if you are trying to add or subtract to the fields you've already set up, they will change. It's just a strange thing with Bryton. I wish they would get rid of it because it just makes no sense. There's only 3 bike profiles as well. Personally, I'd like there to be more, especially if you have a bunch of different bikes with different sensors on them and you want a very specific setup for each of them. So, that's just a personal thing. One last thing is that the post-ride metrics and analysis available in the Bryton Active app are genuinely cool. There's some data in here that I haven't really seen anywhere else, and some different ways of displaying it that I did find myself looking at afterwards. It's the sort of stuff that isn't in something like Strava, so I did actually appreciate that. That's a nice little reason to use the app after your ride, rather than just forget about it. Bryton has claimed up to 20 hours of battery life with this unit, but my heavy use testing has found that I think around 15 hours is a more reasonable expectation. And that's using navigation, using the backlight, having a bunch of sensors connected, and using multiple tracking protocols. So that's probably going to be more reflective of how people are going to use the unit. And that's a pretty decent result. It's not quite as good as what Garmin offers, but it's a whole lot better than something like the Wahoo Element Roam, which would definitely not last that long. So a solid battery life, but not exactly category leading. Bryton is clearly pushing hard on the creation, communication, and following of routes with the Rider 750. Creating with Bryton's native route planner on the app is quite slow and awkward, but more importantly, it integrates with Strava, Ride with GPS, and Komoot, so you can leverage those brilliant systems for your creation and management. Connecting these services through the phone app lets you send routes directly to the head unit, which is seamless and very easy. The Bryton Active app can turn any of the routes in your library into full turn-by-turn navigatable ones when you send them to your device, but you do need to remember to do that before you export it out, otherwise you're just going to get a breadcrumb route. That's a nice little feature when you remember to do it. Bryton have chosen OpenStreetMaps as their mapping source, and generally they look quite nice and with plenty of detail when you're viewing them on the unit out in the world. When you are navigating a route, you do need to pay a bit of attention to it though, because the only guidance you tend to get is a little bit of a beep about 50 meters from the turn, and that can be easy to miss if you're not paying enough attention to it. The unit also won't reroute you back onto a course. It'll tell you that you're off it, but you do need to find your own way back. That's something that is a difference from Garmin and Wahoo's ecosystem. Personally, that doesn't really bother me. I've always hated it when units freak out and try and reroute you back onto a course if you've left it. I would rather find my own way back than have the unit try and just rapidly calculate it. A lot of the time, it's more harm than good when the units try to do that to you. So keep that in mind with the Bryton. One interesting feature with the Rider 750 is voice address lookup, so you can say out loud a location, a street, or a business name, and it will draw a route to go there.
Norton Summit?
That is the theory. In practice, I would say it doesn't really work. I only had probably a 30% success rate with it even recognizing what I'd said. And that is, again, mixing location, street, and business name tests. I speak fairly clearly, but it had no idea what I was saying a lot of the time. When it does recognize it and it draws you a route, it does an okay job of it, but the universal problem with these automatic creators is that there's no substitute for local knowledge.
Okay, so, I mean, technically it's right, but this is definitely not, this is Coach House Road and Woodland Way, and if you live in Adelaide, that's not really the road you're going to want to take to Norton Summit.
So it will get you there, and it will do things like avoid highways and avoid unsafe places for a bike. It'll get you where you want to go, but it doesn't mean it'll get you there in the best possible way for cycling. That is the universal experience, not so much a Bryton specific criticism, just a general criticism that I've always had with automatic route creators. So what is the Rider 750 like when you're out on the bike? Well, I can say for sure it's very, very difficult to photograph and take video of. So I'm very sorry for the fact that in all of these clips you can see almost nothing. It's just so damn reflective. But other than that, it's pretty damn good. It's a very unobtrusive unit, it doesn't shout at you, it doesn't do anything stupid, and it just lets you get on with your ride, which is, exactly what a GPS should do. As much as I didn't love the screen, I did like the fact that you could cycle through it using buttons or with a swipe. I do rather like having the maps, even if I'm not following a course specifically. It's just a nice thing to keep an eye on. Probably my biggest gripe is that once you've started an activity, the menus are blocked off. You cannot change anything, you can't load up a route, and that is annoying. I would like to be able to change things once an activity has started, so Bryton, please change that. Once you've finished the ride, you can use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi uploading, and the app will share it across your shared services. Completely seamless and easy. In a very on-market move, the Rider 750 can connect to and control a smart trainer. I used it with my Wahoo Kicker, and by and large it does exactly what it says it'll do. You can create and run through workouts, you can manually adjust resistance up and down from 0 to 100, or the head unit and trainer together can simulate a saved course. Now the trainer stuff is relatively well implemented. I think it's quite interesting to be able to build a route and then ride it on the trainer. I made the mistake of picking a steep hill to design a route around and then try and record myself talking during it. So the difficulty is certainly real. Ultimately though, it's not going to drag me away from something like Zwift, but I could see there being some people who would quite enjoy a system like this. Oh, we're going downhill now. There is no denying that both Garmin and Wahoo have a much more full and fleshed out ecosystem around their GPS units. They've been in the market more time, they have more hardware, they have a lot more going on. I would caution people from getting too obsessed with that though, because I've always found that the number of functions that you actually use from these big, broad, rich ecosystems is far less than the actual total that are there. The one thing that Bryton is lacking that I would say stands out is Strava live segments. I know a lot of people have gotten used to that and it's something that they want in their GPSs. It's also something that you can find in a lot of other places, so it is conspicuous in its absence here. Other than that, there's really nothing I felt like I was doing without that I really wanted. The big and obvious competitor to this unit is something like the Garmin Edge 830. They're both kind of roughly around the same size, have a lot of the same functions, and have a touchscreen. And I think that the Bryton most definitely compares well against that unit once you scale for price. Things get a little bit more complicated though when you introduce the Garmin Edge 530. That is my personal unit of choice, because it just does so much for pretty much the same price as this, and that is a huge problem for the Rider 750. The 530 is just an outstanding all-round unit, and if you take away the need for a touchscreen, that is where the biggest problem is for the Rider 750. To wrap it all up then, the Rider 750 is a big step forwards for Bryton, and I do think it is a competitive unit against things like the Garmin Edge 830. It does have a very feature-packed ecosystem around it, and it has most of the core functions that you would want from a GPS at that price point. I did devote a lot of time in this video to talking about the things that kind of bothered me, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast and the nature of reviewing. I do think a lot of people will be happy with the Rider 750, especially if you do want to save a bit of money without feeling like you're doing without some really core or critical functions. And that is where I'm going to leave it. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, hang around, watch more content. And as always, ride safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.